I really do turn to God a lot. And in my 20s, I started hearing his voice, learning how to discern that thought in my head that's his voice. So I bring that up because this,
Yes.
where I really started to doing this new practice, I started in my 40s. And it's one of those practices, I like to say
Wow.
it's simple, but not easy. It's simple, but not easy. It's like, oh, the way to stay
Yes.
thin is just exercise more than you eat. Okay, that's simple enough. I say
Not
what I,
easy.
yeah. Well, the reason I started doing this practice is because I was so overwhelmed because I had the 8 children. I was working full time. I was the
Mm.
sole financial support, and they needed to be driven everywhere. They were older, and I had decided I needed to finish my degree. I was in the high tech industry, and at that point, things were changing. When I first started, you just had to be smart. But then, and I am smart about math and science, but then it had to be that you had to have a degree because these people were all going public and they want to know, what are your higher ups and what is their credentials. And so I had a year to finish college. So I started going to college full time too. So any of those three things I think would have been a full
Oh,
time
wow.
job. College, full time,
Yes. Oh my gosh.
yes. Bringing in enough money to support a family of 9 took some work. And
Mhm.
third, this just being a mom to all those kids. So,
Yeah.
the house, laundry, all that stuff. So, anyway, what happened is I knew how to set priorities and I was setting priorities,
Hmm.
but I had more priorities on my plate than I could possibly handle. I was getting about 4 hours sleep a night, and I would wake up in the middle of the night just frantic about what I might have forgotten to do. And there came a time when, within just not a very long time, I did things that it turned out I could have waited. So I took a paper into a class at night, and there was a sign on the door, the professor's sick. So you don't need to turn the paper in now. It'll be due next week. And and that was, before you could have gotten an email about it. And then I remember going into a client just a few days later with this big proposal I'd worked on that they'd requested. When I came in, they said, "Oh, but we want you to make some changes to it. So why don't you come back next week with the changed proposal?" And I'm thinking, if I had known, I could have focused on other things. That's what I was thinking. That's when I started thinking, if I just knew the future, that's kind of how I was thinking. If I just knew the future, I'd know not to do that, right? And then I thought, well, wait, I know who does know
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
future. That would be God. And so then I started taking this list of what I thought I had to do each day and saying, well, what do I really need to do, God? That was how it started. What do I really need to do today, God? And since I knew how to hear that inner voice, that prompting, I could just look through my list and think, yeah, I don't need that. I don't need that. And then he would add a thing or two, like you should do this, or add this thing to your major, or call this friend, or drop a meal off, like I didn't have enough to do. And I
Mm.
would do those things. Yeah. And it was just, it got to the point where I was actually finished every night by 8. If I only did what he did, what he said, do this, if I didn't add things to the list, then everything that really needed to be done was done. And if I was running behind on something,
Wow.
I could think, well, God knew this was going to happen. He knew I was going to be stuck in this traffic jam, so I don't have to worry. That I became very confident in how things were going in my life. And after a while, I would be finished every night by 8. I didn't have to get up until like 5 or
Wow.
6, getting everybody ready for school. So I had a chance to just sit and chat with my children. Well, I thought that I was being needy to do it this way. Plus, I don't like to be micromanaged. And so as soon
Yeah.
as everything got back under control, I thought, okay, I don't have to do this anymore. And then a couple of years later, I'm back in the same situation and I started all over again. This is kind of where my book
Wow.
started. So I'd done it before, now I'm doing it again. And then I realized that no, God wants us to do this. And
Yeah.
I had two scriptures. One is in John 8:29, where Christ says, "The Father is always with me." I'm paraphrasing, because I do always those things that please him. And so, and I thought, well, how does he know? Because, I mean, he would go off and pray, right? And then he'd come, oh, we're going to Damascus today, or whatever we're doing, right? That's what he'd be saying. And they'd go. And then as I was rethinking the Lord's Prayer. There's the part where,
Yeah.
it's our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. It says, thy will be done on earth the way it is in heaven. And I started thinking, well, how is it done in heaven? I mean, you think the angels are all like off busy on their own little projects, and every once in a while they get stuck and come to God, hey, could you help me with this? Or are they more, what do you want me to do today, God? And so,
Wow.
and sometimes it's a big project, like start a podcast or something, but it is this thought. And that's when I began to think, oh, he really does want me to check in with him every day and
Yeah.
say, what do you want me to do today, God? And and I still take my ideas, and I also do it at night more than in the morning,
Yeah.
because by the time I get up in the morning, I'm kind of ready to go on whatever I had already
Yeah.
decided. And what I would add to this is that it is that change from what do I need to do to what do you want me to do that brought about this
Mm.
unexpected life that I love. That is feels like I'm really filling his
Wow.
purpose.
Yeah.
And so a lot of it,
Wow.
sometimes it's big stuff. Like I want you to be guest on podcasts, and I'm always like, I don't know how I would do that. So I, went on to my writers groups. Any of you on podcasts? How do you find out how to get on podcasts like that, right? And then sometimes it's just tiny stuff. Just a few weeks ago, it was a thought,
Yeah.
like I was thinking about this woman, and she's has been so helpful, and her husband's in the hospital, and I'm like, how is she even doing all this stuff? She's an angel. She's an angel. She deserves to be blessed. I
Mm.
know you're blessing her, but I might do something. Like maybe I make this really good chicken noodle soup. I could take her some of that, so she doesn't even have to think about what she's
Yeah.
going to eat. And I said, I'm going to probably do it on Thursday because I'm going to be in her area of town. That's the way I was thinking. And God's like, take her a chocolate cake. And I thought, she's a diabetic, right? You know that, God? I just thought I'd mention this. And she's home
Right.
alone because her husband's in the hospital, right? But it was take her a chocolate cake. And I thought, well, any special time. And again, it was Thursday. So I called her Wednesday night, made sure she was going to be home, and said, I'm not going to tell you what I'm bringing you. But when you see it, I want you to know it wasn't my idea. It was God, so don't blame me for it. Okay? Because I knew she believed in God too. And so I showed up with this cake, and she didn't really say much. I came in, she was kind of looking, cake. And I had, made it from scratch, and it had sort of a whipped cream chocolate icing on it. So I said, I'll have to put it in your fridge. And she's like, okay. When I came out, how's your husband? And I left. She didn't say anything. But the next day, a friend called me and said she was so depressed that day. And she was grieving. Her mother had
Oh.
died just a few months before. And I mean, she's older. Her mother was older. And her father had died like a year or two before that. Well, it turned out her mother's birthday was on Thursday, the day I brought the cake. And her dad's birthday was this day. Yeah. And so guess what their favorite cake was?
Wow.
It was chocolate cake. Both
Chocolate
of them,
cake.
their favorite cake was chocolate cake. That's right.
Oh my
And so I think it
gosh.
said to her, yeah, because when I came walking in, it was like I was saying to her, God sent this, not me, okay? This isn't me. Don't blame this one on me.
Yeah.
But
Because
to
your
her,
logical brain is saying, don't do this. That makes no sense.
right,
But God is like, I'm not asking if it makes sense. I'm just telling you to do this thing. Wow.
right. And Paul says that. He says it looks like foolishness to men when the Spirit is speaking to you, right? So
Wow.
I have daily things like that and then big projects that he often gives me. But that's why I like
Wow.
asking, what do you want me to do today? Because he does know things like that we don't know.